Hi, it's the Catholic CEO, Henry Kutarna. Welcome to this Business Wisdom series by the Catholic CEO. It's going to be everything that you need to know about business from a Catholic perspective. It's not a replacement for an MBA or for going to school and becoming an economist or a business administrator or an accountant. No, but it does accumulate a body of wisdom that I've gained over the years from watching, from participating, from being in business and understanding what are the basics and what are the common mistakes and what are the most prized solutions to running a Catholic business. In this first category, the basics of an economic system, microeconomics, macroeconomics, supply and demand. We're going to go through these at a high level, but with some detail. The concept of an economic system goes right back to the earliest history of mankind. And for the Catholic CEO purposes, I'm going to cover from the time of Christ. And I'm going to assert to you that in biblical and pre-biblical times, there were economic systems in place. So for example, St. Paul was a tent maker. Therefore, he would make tents and he would sell them, presumably to earn his living so that he could travel around the Mediterranean in all of his journeys to promote the faith. He would have had to then buy materials. He would have had to produce equipment, sewing needles probably, other devices to stretch materials. He would have had to buy skins to produce the actual tents. He would have had to buy some thread and some other types of materials that would go into making a wonderful tent. And he was good at his craft, so he probably made very high quality tents, and he sold them in sufficient quantities, presumably, to make a living. My point is that even in biblical times, there's an economic system. And an economic system is composed of buyers and sellers. Economics itself is the science of the marketplace, the study of the marketplace. And so our first point is that there were economic systems as simple or as complex as one might think, even in biblical times. There are all of these different roles that people at the time of our Lord played in an economic system. All of them had to buy materials or obtain them somehow, perhaps trade for them, barter them. They would perform their craft, they would make something, and then they would sell it. And they would sell it either for money or for in-kind products and maybe even services. You can go down history and you can recall feudal times where the economic system revolved around the king or the emperor or the prince or the duke, somebody who had a position of authority and had perhaps a castle or a place where others came and settled. And so they would unite in a common defense of their own livelihoods and their place of living. And in return for that protection that the duke or the king offered, there would be services rendered, and there would be agricultural pursuits, there would be cattle raised, there would be all the different crafts, metal making, blacksmith, lumber would be part of an economic system. You can look at the monastic life, monasteries. Even today, modern 21st century, we have abbeys and monasteries where pretty well they are self-sufficient. In other words, they make items for themselves. They will sell those items. They will be able to produce materials and services, participating in a general economic system. Now, one of the most famous names that you'll hear about, and you might want to get a hold of this book, this would be the first reference that I would propose to you. Adam Smith wrote a treatise called An Inquiry into the Causes of the Wealth of Nations. And so Adam Smith was the first formal writer to chronicle an entire economic system. Many writers before him, of course, commented about the economic systems of their day, but he was the first who chronicled an economic theory, and it's the free market economic system that he spoke of. In general, the way an economy works is that you make something, you perform a service, you buy all the inputs necessary for it. This is how people made a living. Even the average farmer or hunter or fisherman would be performing an economic service. He would be building, making, buying, procuring, mining, all for the purpose of either trading that or obtaining money. I'm going to take a quick word on money during this very first session. Money is something that has been in existence for many, many centuries in one form or another. Money has four objects. Number one, it's a store of value. If you have dollars, you know how many dollars you have in your bank account or in your wallet or in your purse, and you know how much that is worth. And that money you either worked for, or you sold a product for it, or you built something and sold it. But the point is, you know that it's a store of value. So that's number one. Number two, it's a medium of exchange. Rather than you hauling around the furniture that you made and built, you carry money, or even a checkbook, or even in our current day, a digital wallet with a dollar figure in it. And that's a medium of exchange. You can trade your dollars. You can write a check. You can give somebody dollar bills, and they know that those dollar bills are worth something, and so it's a medium of exchange. You can actually do trades without bartering. You can exchange easily using money. Money is a way to keep track too. It's a measure. It's a measure of transactions. It's a measure of our wealth. And finally, money is a safe tool to avoid carrying products around. If you can imagine carrying sacks of gold in a caravan, how dangerous that would be, how risky that would be. But if you had a dollar bill or a certificate showing how much gold you had back in your reserve, and it was guaranteed, let's say by the king or by the government, you would have money. And so the four main reasons that money exists: number one, it's a store of value. Number two, it's a medium of exchange. Number three, it's a way to keep track and measure. And number four, it's a safe way to exchange without carrying the actual hard product around with you. Economic systems, the use of money, have gradually developed to the very sophisticated situation we have today, where we have money that's denominated in various currencies of various countries. We have the ability to have actual hard cash, printed currency, coinage. We also have the ability to have digital entries on a computer that tell you how much money you have. And we can every day, we can use our money to purchase a wide variety of products. Almost everything we can do in society can be done with money. And so this is the development of an economic system. And so from the Catholic business perspective, what I'm trying to point out is that there's a historical role for economic systems. We've participated in them. I've gone all the way back to biblical times. We now know that money is the medium of exchange, and it's part of the economic system. I'm going to quickly jump now to the concept of supply and demand. When St. Paul made his tents, he had to understand the marketplace for tents. Now imagine if there were so many tent makers that they produced a surplus of tents. Too many tents on the marketplace. What happens? Well, the price of that goes down. I'll explain that in a second. But the point is that in St. Paul's era, the concept of supply and demand would have been very known to him. The fishermen, St. Peter and all of his fishermen colleagues, his brothers in the trade, they would know that if there was an oversupply of fish brought to the market on a particular day or in a particular season, the price of fish would go down because there would be an oversupply, and the demand might be fixed. There might be only a certain number of people in that village or in that region buying fish every day for consumption. And so when there's too many fish brought to the marketplace, there's a lot of choice, and then people will drop the price. And so you've got the concept of supply and demand. If, for example, that village grew and many, many people were moving in, but there was only a standard quantity of fish that was caught every day and brought to the marketplace, suddenly you might have 10, 20, 30, 50% more people buying fish. And if it's only a fixed supply, what happens? The price rises, and so you're going to have greater demand. So the concept of supply and demand is an important one, particularly if you run a business, because no matter how good your product is, no matter how much of a great price you want to sell it for, you are still subject to the marketplace, the pressures of supply and demand. So this is a topic that we will delve into in further detail. Let's move now to the concept of microeconomics and macroeconomics. Microeconomics is that study of the individual decision maker. If you, as a tent maker, Sell your tents in the marketplace. You are a single player. You yourself cannot control that market. You have to offer your tents for sale at your market, and you're going to get a certain price for those. Your product is going to be the tent. Your buyer is going to be somebody who wants to buy your tent to live in it or to use it as a mobile home, you could say, out on the ranch or out on the in the sheepfold. And so if your product is a good quality product, you can sell it at the market price. If for some reason the market price rises and you're a tent maker and you start to see that the price of the product is rising, you're going to instinctively, this is a microeconomic decision, you're instinctively going to think, I should make more tents because I can sell them at this higher price. And so you can see what's going to happen here. You make more tents, and all these individual tent makers look at the market and say, the price has gone up this month. I'm going to make more tents. Well, when that happens, you suddenly have a lot more tents flooding the market. And what does that do to price? Well, it depresses the price because now there's all kinds of choice out there and you don't have to bid the price up. You can offer less, and the chances of you getting a tent for less money are very high. And so this is a microeconomic decision. Let's look at it from the point of view of the buyer. If the buyer wants to buy tents and he understands the market and he knows that tents are selling at 100 denarii per tent, I'm just making that up. If he sees that the price is 100 denarii per tent, so he's going to save his money, he's going to work for it, and he's going to want to buy a tent. So he'll come to you and he'll make a deal with you and he'll buy your tent. But if he suddenly sees that there's 50% more tents available, all these different colors, these different styles, these different sizes, these different methods of construction, some of them are more robust, some of them are sewn better, and some of them are worse, he's going to snoop around and he's going to find a better deal someplace. He's going to offer less than the market price. He's also making a microeconomic decision. But here's the point. The buyers and the sellers in their individual activities, this is where Adam Smith spoke very wisely, in those individual decisions that they make, rational thinkers making prudent choices based on the signals that the marketplace tells them about price, they will change the quantity demanded or the quantity supplied, and you'll have a new equilibrium price. This is what makes the business marketplace so complex for the business person, because the price is always changing, the price is always moving, and there's always movement in and out, people wanting to get into your line of business. If you're a coffee roaster, suddenly down the street there's 3 other coffee roasters. Well, what's that going to do to your price? It's going to have an impact on your price, and it's going to drop the price perhaps. So microeconomics is the study of the individual decision maker. Now the combination of all these individual decision makers working together creates the global behavior of the marketplace, and that's where we start to move now to macroeconomics. So macroeconomics is the study of the interplay of different countries and different economic systems at their highest aggregate level, not down at the micro individual person level, but at the highest level. So if you have a country, for example, that is expert at making tents, it's an agrarian society, there's probably animals, there's probably a lot of animal husbandry, maybe crops, and so you will have a specialty in tent making. But let's say you're there's another country that operates on very rocky, rugged mountain regions. There may not be space for animal husbandry, but there might be mines. There might be salt mines, gold mines, tin mines, all these other commodities that are out there. Well, you then have international trade. You have the concept of one country selling its goods and services either at the individual level or on a supply management level, like the grain farmers do. They get together and they create a wheat pool and they sell their grain on the international market, withholding it and adding quantity to improve the price. Think of the Arabs with the oil. Arabs can control, Saudi Arabia can control the price, the world price of oil. How? Well, they can decide to hold off oil from the marketplace, and that creates a scarcity, and then what happens? The price rises. Or they could flood the market. They could add a whole bunch of more oil to the marketplace. They could ship more tankers full of oil, and suddenly then the price drops. And so you've got this macroeconomic behavior. Now I'm going to add other features. You can add in the macroeconomic system subsidies. You could have a government that wants to protect its industry. The dairy industry in the US and Canada is a very protected industry. The government subsidizes it, and it adds tariffs so that if you want to buy butter or milk or cream, you're going to, if there's a tariff added, you're going to pay a higher price, and that higher price then is a barrier to entry. So you've got this concept of governments trying to then control, for the good of their own citizens, various subsidies and tariffs. Again, we're not going to get into the technical details too much, but be aware that in your own industry there might be tariffs, there might be subsidies, and these are designed for public policy purposes to help achieve some sort of an objective. Now, there's talk of free trade, which is trade without tariffs and subsidies. There's also the doctrine of the balance of trade. If a country produces $1 million worth of tents and it sells those to other countries, but it imports $1.2 million worth of, let's say, salt or tin, well, there's an imbalance of trade, right? They sell 1 million worth and then they have to pay 1.2 million to buy. That is a negative balance of trade. They're in a trade deficit, just using money now to establish the value, not counting the pounds or the tons of lead or salt or tin, or the number of animal skins that go into making up a tent. So the doctrine of specialization comes in then. There are certain countries that specialize in a certain kind of business. If you're a Canadian farmer, or if you're a Canadian rancher, or you're a Canadian miner, you're going to realize, or a lumber mill, you can see that the Canadian economy is largely a resource extraction economy, but the US in an earlier era was an industrial economy, and so you had specialty in steel making and producing of hard products. And so countries would develop specializations, and that was a policy area that was either helped or hindered by the government in order to improve or detract from the lifetime experience of its citizens. So we're going to stop on this topic today. I've just covered in a very broad way the basics of the economic system: microeconomics, macroeconomics, supply and demand. Next topic, we're going to talk about money and banking. So thank you for being part of this. This is the Catholic Business Wisdom series by the Catholic CEO. It's everything you need to know about business from the Catholic perspective. Henry Kutarna, the Catholic CEO, thanks for joining me today.